So hi, hello everyone. It's more late night audio. So I'm not as like peppy as I normally am, which isn't bad. I'm not like my quiet, soft voice either, because my husband's not here, so I can talk as much as I want. But I was asked a long time ago about how it was a couple of things, and a couple of things that were asked were, what is it that I'm already wording it wrong. It was more so asking, hey, how is it that you seem like so confident? You seem so aloof. Like you don't, you don't give a dang attitude. And I know I have to talk like that because if I say anything bad within the first few like minutes of the video, my video gets dinged. So, the choice of an ever-changing algorithm. But because of that, I've also been asked many times, because I've talked about it before and I've mentioned it before, that I was also bullied. So I've had quite a few people ask me like, "Oh, are you ever gonna do like bully story times or blah 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 blah, like your worst bullying adventures?" And recently, I've been on TikTok, and I know, I'm becoming one of those millennials. So if you do find TwistedDisaster on TikTok, that is me. I only have two videos on it. I mostly use it to browse, so I really don't use it. If that changes in time, it does. But if you see the TwistedDisaster account with my art as the icon, that is in fact me. It's not a fake account. I know I said I wouldn't get one, but my friends sucked me in. But I've fallen into like I more like fell into like a really, I don't like saying depressive, but it is a pretty sad part of TikTok where it's mostly people around my age. They're all adults, because if you guys don't know, I'm 27, turning 28 this year. And, a lot of us are talking about like what it was like being bullied in the 90s and really early 2000s, before social media was the way it was, and how a lot of people are like amazed by those stories, and they're like, that wouldn't happen, that can't happen, it's like, no, a lot of bad stuff happened back then, a lot. Yeah, a lot of stuff didn't fly, but if you were in that weird like gray area of the like sue you part of the 90s slash early 2000s, if you were a kid alive in that time and like alive, no, you know what I'm talking about. There was like a section of time where people were able to like sue for anything, and it was like a really big part of our childhoods and stuff, where you'd see families suing schools for stuff like that going under the radar, or you see people suing McDonald's for coffee, or you'd see blah blah blah. It was a very big time for lawsuits, and it's not that people don't still do them now, but it was a big time. And there was like that weird gray area in between where a lot of people didn't know what it was like. They didn't realize what they had to do, certain things she had to go through. So sadly, a lot of people like me, we just kind of had to learn to live with it. And it sounds bad, and bullying still happens to this day. Cyberbullying is very serious and stuff like that. But I've had people ask me like, well, how is it that you don't mind the hate? Because obviously everybody gets hate. And I think the number one thing that I've done that's helped me, and helped me stay more centered, is I I have to start from the beginning. And so I also don't have like my notes here. I don't have my paper ASMR or anything. I'm just shooting wild while we're going. So when I was really young, I remember, now it might not seem like it because I talk on YouTube and talk on stream and stuff, but I was a very shy kid. And when being a really shy kid, there were a lot of things that went under the radar. Like I was saying, a lot of things swept on the rug. I had a reading disorder that I didn't really know about until later in school. I, didn't get properly diagnosed with ADHD and a lot of other things until I was well out of the public school system and I was an adult. So during that time, you kind of just sadly had to like learn to live with it, or you had to, find mechanisms to help through it. And so when I was really young, starting out, I actually started off at a private Jewish kindergarten and preschool. It was at my old temple, and I've talked about this before. I think I mentioned it in my like religion video. I'll put an iCard here or something, where I had a really good, awesome, temple back when I was Jewish, and my family's Jewish. I'm not spiritually Jewish anymore, but I was raised it, so you can't really stop how you were being raised. And I loved it, and I thought it was great. And then when it came time for big kid school, I ended up going to a finger quote really good public school. And I say finger quote because obviously you can't see my face. But it was not a good school. What ended up happening was I was very shy. I didn't know anybody there. I had been taught different things at my old school. And it's going to be so weird to say this if people don't understand what it's like. But I've transferred schools 4 times in my public school child education experience because of bullying and other circumstances. So when you transfer schools like that, or you move or anything like that, it's very hard because you learn that other districts and other schools, they have different, requirements for things and certain things like that. And so I remember being in elementary school, and I know it's like, what's this to do with anything? It does. I swear, it's going to go into it. And these are the bullying stories I'm okay sharing, so you kind of get like 2 birds in 1 stone. I knew a lot more than a lot of other first graders did at the time, because their kindergarten preschool requirements were very different than mine were. So I was a bit more advanced, but because I had issues taking tests and I had issues with that, they didn't want to put me in advanced placements, which is probably good. I probably would have flunked out of school if I was actually put into like actual advanced placements, but it was hard. And so I had to I kind of grew into a habit of like not wanting to do my homework and not wanting to do a lot of things. And I was quiet because when the holidays came around, because also back then the school year started in the fall. So you kicked off right around the holiday time. And the thing that put the biggest target on my back when I was a kid was right around the holidays. I remember it so clearly and so vividly that my elementary school teacher, my first grade teacher, really wanted me to talk about what it was like being a Jew. And I didn't know there was stigma behind it. I didn't know there were bad people out there. So, yeah, I was excited to talk about it, especially because, my family was pretty chill, So, brought in our menorah, did the spiel, talked about all the jazz that you do. And sorry, my AC kicked on and my cat is being a cat. But all that being said, I was super excited talking about it, and that put the first target on my back. And I was, made fun of for that, and that opened a window because I wasn't used to being bullied at all. And I would cry very easily. And then they would make fun of me for everything because they liked how, fun fact, medical fact about me, I have a deviated septum that's really severe. I used to make the joke back when I was in high school. I was like, oh yeah, I've got the reason every Jew gets a nose job, because it's a bad joke in retrospect, but I was a Jew at the time, so it was like, haha, funny. The humor was really weird in the early 2000s and the late 90s. A lot of weird jokes that I definitely wouldn't say now, like that really bad Jew one that I did. But because of that, if my sinuses get blocked from crying, I would actually be in so much pain that I would end up either passing out or throwing up. And it is a problem, technically, I still do to this day, because because the joys of American public healthcare system, because it's not a life-threatening disease and it doesn't damage my brain in any way, it's not a necessary surgery, so because of that, no insurance will cover it. And nose jobs are expensive, and now that I'm an adult especially, they're very, very expensive. Someday that's one of those things where I'm like, yes, when I finally have a lot of money someday, getting that nose job, getting that symptom fixed, because I would like to, cry and not have to worry about my sinuses getting clogged up. But because of that, kids are mean and they thought it was funny. Then it was my weight. Then it was that I would talk to myself because I didn't have friends. And then it was that I was that weird quiet kid in class that I wouldn't talk to people, but at recess I would talk to myself. And that's something I did. I would talk to myself because I had no one else to talk to. I remember very clearly that I would like sit under tables and like I would create stories in my head. Granted, as an adult, that probably looks kind of weird, but at the same time, when I eventually have kids, if I ever catch that, I'll know that, hey, that's not that weird. They might just be really lonely and not really have kids that want to play with them. I was also that kid that when we had to like divvy up into teams and stuff, I had to always be picked last, which, also really hurt and didn't help a lot. And I was lucky because I also had like neighborhood kids, when I got home that we like hung out and talked to and were able to play with. That was a good thing that helped a lot. I know that's not really a thing right now because of Six Spiky Round Boy, but hopefully someday that goes back to that. But I eventually got to a point, and this is where the confidence thing kicks in, where I remember being like, it still hurts. So don't act like when I say this it didn't. I remember thinking this is like so cliche and so like, oh, this is like an edgy movie, but it is. It's genuinely what I thought. I was a freaking kid. And that was that, well, they treat me like a monster because I'm a Jew. They say that I killed Jesus when I didn't know who Jesus was as a kid because, again, raised by Jews. Um, you know, um, that I was going to hell even though Jews don't believe in hell, and that, I'm a terrible person, and that I'm fat and blah, blah, blah. And so I remember being like, well, okay, I guess I'll be unapologetically myself. I'll be that weird kid. I'll be proud that I talk to myself at recess. I'll be proud that, if they call me a monster, I'll chase them around and hiss at them. Because I did. I got to a point where I just started doing that. I started taking my power back. And things were starting to work out a little bit better. I was still not happy. I still didn't like going to school. I was very much, especially if you're in that time, you'd probably understand. I would go to the nurse's office all the time. I would make up being sick because I did not want to go to school. I had teachers who wouldn't believe me. I had teachers who would blame me for my problems. I would have a distraction because I would cry in the middle of class because kids would be pulling on my hair or sending me really mean, hurtful things. Granted, yeah, they're like, oh, well, they're kids. They couldn't have been that bad. You're right. They weren't that bad. But when you're a little kid and you've never experienced anything like that, it's the worst thing that could ever happen to you. You don't know. You don't know what it's like. And obviously this isn't the like who had it worse game, because that's something that a lot of people do. And trust me, as I've been on TikTok, I've seen a lot of people like pulling the well, I had it worse card. Everybody's had it worse. You don't know what someone's gone through. You don't know what they mentally can handle and what they mentally can't. And you shouldn't judge people for that. For me, I never been through something like that. And then when things started getting a little better, I actually started making some friends, and things were getting a little better. I was still getting bullied and teased, but like so did my other friends. So it's kind of like we were like the misfit, kids. We were the cool kids, and we would play games and we would, do stuff at recess and blah blah blah. And it was a good time. I also got to do a lot of extracurricular activities, so that also helped me stay distracted. But I also had some family members that were older than me. So they ended up hitting puberty first. And because of that, they started noticing, because we didn't have the, like, love yourself movement that we have now. They had the, like, they would tell me, like, oh yeah, Michelle, if you just sucked in your gut all day going to school, you could pretend that you're skinny and they won't make fun of you. And my cousins would literally, like, show me, like, techniques on how to, like, have my stomach not show throughout class, and how they did it all the time. And the sad thing was, it wasn't meant to be bullying, but it was really toxic and it was really hard. And I've talked about that in my eating disorder video, where, I had a lot of issues with things like that, or I had a lot of issues relating to my weight, and I had a lot of issues relating to other things, and it sucked because I felt like I was getting, attacked every which way but Sunday. And then something happened to me in fourth grade that I've talked about before, and I'm not going to bring it here, but it was it was very serious. It was very serious. I was hospitalized for it. And it was a big eye opener for me because I was told that I was the reason that I went to the hospital, because if I didn't make it easy for my bullies, they wouldn't keep doing it because they wouldn't be having fun doing it. I later found out one of my main bullies was the principal's kids. So that kind of, that solidified it. But it's one of those, like, you find it out when it's too late. Oh, and my parents found out. Oh, they were so mad. But it was, past statute to do anything. So, but it caused a lot of trauma, caused a lot of issues in me. And then when I went to middle school, so I'd been used to physically being bullied, like, throughout all of elementary school, and a lot of other trauma and, like, instances when I went, like, when I was at home and stuff. And then when I went to middle school, that was not a good time. But that's when a lot of mental abuse happened. I had a very severe bully, and I remember it was never knew why. I still don't know why to this day, like, at all. Like, I know it sounds bad because bullying's wrong all in all, but I'm like, okay, at least in elementary school it made more and it's not right. It's not right that it made, like, psychological sense, but it's like, oh yeah, I was the weird kid. I didn't go to kindergarten with these kids. Oh yeah, I was the Jew that the entire school wouldn't let me forget. Oh, that's something I didn't bring up. Okay. So I started to hate the holidays. Again, I don't know if I brought this up in the religion video, but oh my God, because I was, like, the only Jew in my freaking school. Literally every teacher around the holidays, like, I would beg and plead. I'm like, I don't want to talk about why I'm different. Like, no, you're going to talk about why you're different. You're going to sit in front of the class and you're going to explain the menorah, you're going to explain the story, you're going to do it because they're not going to experience it any other way. And I also didn't have a spine, so I would just beg and plead, but I wouldn't make a scene. I'd be like, please, I don't want to. I don't want to. No, you're going to have to. Okay, I guess. And it's again, not right. I'm not saying it like, of course, but I'm like, at least that one makes sense, especially as an adult. It's like, oh yeah, I was bullied because I was the weird odd one out. Like, I was the weird kid. And I was the weird kid because I didn't believe what everybody else believed, which, by the way, it was public school, so it wasn't even like, like a religious school or anything. Just that there wasn't information like there is nowadays. There isn't vast acceptance. So there's still a lot of hate. Don't say, like, oh, well, Michelle, you can't be that stupid to think the world's a kumbaya. No, it's not. But it's a lot easier to see stuff now. You know what I mean? You're seeing, it just vast cultures and differences that you're seeing every day online being more widely accepted, which is great. So, after all that, went to middle school, and that's when the psychological bullying happened. Again, internet was very different back in the, like, really early 2000s, because that was the really early 2000s, because I graduated high school in 2011, so I know that's weird, but literally, like, so it was just such a different time. Fandoms were so different back then, especially because I didn't know how to read forums, and I still don't know, like, forums today, but it was weird. And so in elementary school or middle school, I keep saying elementary school, in middle school, again, I was then transferred to a whole new middle school because I was told, well, she'll get a fresh start there. No one will know her there. None of her friends will be there, so it's okay. Well, surprise, surprise, the small world where I grew up, so even though I grew up in Southern California. So there were some bullies that moved over to middle school. And the bullying kept happening, but this time it was name calling. It was ostrich. I'll put a word on screen. I can't say it right now. Brain empty. Brain way too empty. But it ended up becoming a very serious issue because, I was also going through a lot of mental issues at the time. And then something else happened to me that I'm not going to talk about. It's a lot like the 4th grade incident. I'm just not comfortable talking about it online. Maybe someday I am. Today is not that day. And that was also one of the worst things that someone could have ever done to me at the time. And it really put me into perspective. And then when I went to high school, because again, I had to transfer. again, because my mental state was terrible, and the school was like, yeah, she's the problem kid. Again, great public school. I really wasn't surprised when I Googled my middle school, elementary school, and high school to find out that they did some really problematic stuff. That's another fun thing when you're an adult. When you're like, I think it's weird that my school gets away with this. Then you Google it a couple years later, you're like, oh, that's, oh, corruption and greed. Isn't it a beautiful, beautiful tangle they sing? And so, tangle they sing. I really shouldn't make audio this late. But yeah, then I went to high school, and the scary thing was the bullying pretty much stopped, like completely. I still had a couple of people that were like that did move over from my middle school to my high school, but at that point, I thought it was funny. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but like I had a lot of friends. Like, trust me, like I've said later, I found they were not the best of friends. There was a lot of drama, but drama wasn't the same as being bullied, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I had some really bad friends that said some really mean stuff to me, but it wasn't like a consistent, like, I was friends with my bully kind of thing. And I remember just at that time being like, because also smartphones, like, were just kind of coming to existence when I was in high school. Like, I remember when the iPhone 1 came out and they had, like, no service anywhere because, public, like air Wi-Fi and data didn't really exist. It, like, kind of did, but not really. And it was expensive to boot if you did, but it was weird because I remember that some of those bullies from middle school would say the stuff that would just send me home in tears. I would just, again, I'd be a nurse's office kid. I'd, like, be in that nurse's office being like, yep, I don't want to be here. I want to be home, asleep in my bed, or watching TV. I don't want to be here. And I remember being like, why'd that bother me so much? Like he looks like an idiot. I literally, because I had, one of the bullies I had was a guy, and I remember I had PE with him, like the last year I had PE. And it was so weird. Like, it's so odd to say, but it was in that moment that I was like, huh. I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. Like, it still mattered because it put scars in me. But I was like, oh yeah, I mean, you calling me a stupid name? Or are you saying that I suck at sports because I'm fat? Yeah, that's not as bad as, being hospitalized. Or the other thing that happened to me. Yeah, those things are way, way worse. Like, why'd I let words bother me when those two things happened to me? And it was a mindset I just kind of kept through. I got a better relationship with my cousins and, like, their weight thing. And, we're like over it now. Because, again, I know that they weren't being mean. They were genuinely concerned. Because back then it was you had to be a size 0 or you were like Satan. And so it's one of those things where it's like when you're told it your entire life and your entire, childhood, when you go through the stuff I did where you're, again, I repeat it, when you're hospitalized and, you have to, in middle school, something so bad happens to you that you, like, legally have to go see a shrink for a bit. It really puts it into perspective of things. And then again, I random people online, I always just thought back to that bully that still said really stupid stuff that didn't have to do with anything. And I remember being like, yeah, those words really don't hurt the way that they used to. And that's also kind of how I see hate online now. I will admit, I haven't checked on it in a long time, and I'm not going to for my own mental health. But I did hear a rumor that I was on, like, a hate thread on Reddit or something. A lot of YouTubers and artists and other people are on those hate threads, so, like, it's not really a surprise. And I remember, like, combing through it and, like, reading it and, like, laughing about how stupid some of it was, like, and how, like, outlandish it was. Then there were a couple things that they did get under my skin, obviously. I'm not going to say what it was, and that's, like, fueling fire. But Smokey Glow brought it up perfectly where it's like, you know what? They have a right to say their stuff. I'm happy they have They have their space to say it that I don't have to see it in, and my space can be relatively positive, you know? And that's kind of how I've always seen it. That being said, I do take proper criticism. I do take critique. I've openly said, I know my artwork's not perfect. I'm open to critiques. I'm open to suggestions and things like that. But I'm gonna probably ignore when someone's being an asshole. Because why do I need to get worked up on that? You know? It's not gonna hurt me. It's words on a computer. That being said, I'm not saying cyberbullying is anything to laugh at, because it's not. It's very serious and it can destroy people's lives. But for me personally, words on a keyboard on a website that I don't even have an account on don't matter to me. Don't affect me in any way. I can, turn my computer off and go on with my day. I mean, I can't, in a sense that, like, it is my job to, draw, but it's one of those things where you just kind of like, okay, brush it off. And that stayed with me throughout a lot of life. And as I started realizing who my real friends were and who my, good family is, because even if, you got family, don't mean it good. And it really started putting me into perspective where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm better than that. I don't need to take stupid hate. I don't need to respond back to every mean comment or every blah, blah, blah I get. Which, ironically enough, I don't get a lot on my videos, which I'm grateful for, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying open up the floodgates. But I like to believe, as long as you're not being, like, overtly, like, hurtful, using slurs, being just an overall bad person in my comments. I usually don't delete comments unless they're also like links to shady websites. I keep getting this one, guys. Okay, it's like joke time, but I keep getting this one from MILFs, and I don't know why, but like every time I upload a video, it does decently well. I get some random bot account that's like, hey, come do some MILFs or something, and I'm like, no, get this out of my comment section. I'm happy YouTube spammed it. Like, they put it as spam so I can delete it. No. But I wish I had a better thing than like, oh yeah, read this book, do this blah blah. I can't, because for me personally, it was just a slow growth of learning to not get taken advantage of and to realize that, yeah, what happened to me was bad. And I am allowed to feel that bad. I'm allowed to still be bitter about certain things, but I don't let it control my life. And I've learned what was more important, because is this going to lend me into a hospital again? No, well, then there's no reason for me to get that worked up about it. I have my own life to live, and you listening, you do too. And it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to gain self-confidence. A big help was my partner, my husband, and the love of my life, my twin flame Cody. He was with me throughout my sophomore year to now. We're married. We've been together for, this will be our 12 years together, 2 years married. And, he helped me see a lot more in myself, because, again, I started being like, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm going to stand up for myself. But that's not the same as having confidence in yourself. And I know some people are like, oh, you're saying a man gave you... Yeah, he did. I was in a bad place. And for me, feeling like, I'm also a bisexual woman, because it could have been a woman, but it just happened to be a man. It's one of those things where I'm like, well, my partner was there for me and helped bring me up, and I helped bring him up. And if he was a girl, same thing, I'd bring her up, or a non-binary person and bring them up. It's the gender thing doesn't really matter. I'm using an example here. But it helped me gain confidence in myself. And yeah, I have low days. I have good days. I don't give a bloody fuck days. That all depends on the kind of person you are and the experiences you've had. And it can happen to you too when you start putting things into perspective. I hope this helped a little bit. I hope it answered some questions. I hope you guys did enjoy the talk, because I know that when I do these longer ones, I know people like to draw and stuff to them. So, yeah. I, again, hope I answered it Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you as always to my amazing Patreon patrons. Without you guys, this would not be possible. And do I sound more like a robot yet? Because I'm starting to really feel like a robot when I go into my Patreon speech. But all my social media links are also in the link tree down below. If you want to support me and follow me, I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram for my artwork. My portfolio site is DeviantArt. I know, make fun of me in the comments, but I still think it's a good portfolio site. Fight me. Don't actually fight me. That's a joke. But, yeah. As always, guys, I will see you next time, and let's get ready for the spooky season, am I right? Bye.